looks like we're doing things a little more different this week. And by that, I mean covering up my crushing disappointment over not being able to play Path of Exile 2 because its early access launch was delayed. But what I really mean is that I remembered my Microsoft login, which means I have access to Game Pass again. Yippee! But seriously, I've been meaning to get back into looking at Game Pass stuff, if only because there's a great deal of variety on here, and I'm always willing to give things a shot despite my very well-defined tastes. Which kind of brings me to the subject of this week's video, Metal Slug Tactics. It's a turn-based tactics game based on the Metal Slug series of run-and-gun games that the Nazca Corporation originally developed before they were acquired by SNK in 1996. Metal Slug Tactics was developed by Leiker Corporation and published by Dotemu. You know, the group that did a lot of retroporting and still does a lot of retroporting, and then hit us with Wonder Boy, The Dragon's Trap, Streets of Rage 4, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Shredder's Revenge. Yeah, them. It's also probably one of the more interesting games I've played this year. So let's get the show on the road, shall we? Metal Slug Tactics is the latest game following the exploits of the Peregrine Squad, a group of Special Forces operatives who are also lovable weirdos who are out to liberate a small country that was manipulated into rebelling against the world government by fascist dictator Donald Morden, who, based on my sketchy memory and some Googling, might be a pastiche/parody of Saddam Hussein. Look, his design is somewhat inconsistent throughout the series, and will be here all day if I decide to Pepe Sylvia this shit. The narrative is more or less an excuse to go through the fictional country of Abul Abbas and blow up a fascist dictator's entire regime from the ground up. Tactically, of course. And to see how that all pans out, I need to get to the structure and gameplay. And if you stuck around this long, please subscribe. It does a lot to help out the channel, and it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy on the inside. Don't you want that? If you haven't guessed already by the name, which, by the way, you should pay more attention, I put a lot of work into these videos, Metal Slug Tactics is a turn-based tactics game based on the Metal Slug series. And part of why I want to showcase this one is because it's something that we don't get much of these days. I don't mean tactics games of the turn-based variety, oh no, we're getting those like they're going out of style. I mean, we're getting the rare franchise spin-off game. I need to do some context real fast. Back in the day, the main way you could get more of a specific type of series or franchise in video games was to make more of them. Shocker, I know. This is like how it works nowadays, which I think is easier than ever now thanks to the internet being a thing. No, I mean in the sense of, let's take this established series and the gameplay mechanics it's known for, and see if we can adapt them into a different genre wholesale. Primus, take the wheel! We actually saw some of that last week with Mario & Luigi Brothers Ship, which is the latest in the long line of adapting Mario's platforming mechanics into the form of a turn-based RPG. Or, if you want something outside of video games becoming a video game pretty well, the Arkham Trilogy of Batman games by Rocksteady, Insomniac's work on Spider-Man, and even John Wick Hex by Mike Bithell Games are the best examples of that. But I'm keeping it to the realm of video games because that's what I'm talking about. Metal Slug Tactics takes Metal Slug's run-and-gun gameplay and applies a grid with different levels of elevation. The closest thing I can compare it to, gameplay-wise, would have to be Final Fantasy Tactics. No, wait, this works perfectly. But the difference here is that while in Final Fantasy Tactics you get a wide litany of characters and a full-on job system, Metal Slug Tactics is limited to the characters that are playable in the Metal Slug series and their weapons and skills that you pick up throughout a run. And here's a shock to you, the viewer. Metal Slug Tactics is part roguelite. Yep, you thought it was a tactics game, but it was I, the roguelite. I mean, it's still a tactics game, and there's still a bunch of tactics stuff, but it's all housed in the frame of a roguelite. Speaking of, let's talk about that. Now that I've largely got the memes out of my system, let's talk about the actual systems of Metal Slug Tactics. You make squads of 3 and can mix and match them for different strategies. There are 9 playable characters overall, and each is unlocked depending on how many runs you win or by meeting other unlocking conditions, but it's mostly wins. You got Marco, Eri, and Theo to start with their respective sync attack enabling AoE explosives and battlefield manipulation. Then you get Tarma, who's an all-rounder, Nadia, who uses bots and mines, Trevor, who can manipulate enemies with nanomachines, and much to my surprise and delight, the Akari Warriors themselves and King of Fighters regulars Ralph Jones, Clark Still, and Leona Hydern. Ralph builds up momentum for the big booms, Clark supports the team by just yeeting the enemy around like ragdolls, and Leona can mark enemies she helps to kill with after images for some tricky positioning on missions. Everyone has 2 additional weapon loadouts for different variations of their base playstyles, and those, combined with their wide selections of passive abilities, active abilities, and weapon mods, all make for a robust, minute-to-minute system that is all about playing around how you want to play. These are wonderfully balanced alongside both the sync and adrenaline mechanics. Adrenaline is a resource that's tied to your movement. You gain more as you move, jump up and down ledges, and clear gaps. It fuels all of your abilities on top of making it easier for your units to dodge getting shot at. These can be combined with cover bonuses, and at points it led to me taking next to no damage. It was as awesome as it was funny, and it was really funny. Sync, short for synchronization, is the term for team-up attacks. That's where if you shoot one of the enemies on the field with either or both your squad members nearby, makes them shoot that same target and make short work of them. The sync and adrenaline mechanics have the side effect of making the battles go by incredibly fast, which is good because it leans into that run-based nature that the game is going for. They all mesh together to make an incredibly bite-sized and hectic tempo, which works well considering the fact that Metal Slug as a series can also get pretty hectic at times. There are 4 regions in Abu Abbas: the small towns, the tombs, the jungles, and the capital of Sirocco City. You can do 3 missions in any order before Morton gets sick of your shit and sicks a giant robot at you for a boss fight. You fight various soldiers of the rebel army, and the Woken King's undead hordes, thanks Morton, the indigenous population that was manipulated into fighting you, and lastly Morton's elite guard of special operations soldiers and fucked up cyborg mutants. What they lack in mechanical complexity, they usually make up for in numbers, but they're mixed and matched in ways that feel incredibly smart. And this is tied into the main and side objectives that give specific rewards and resources. These range from currencies that go into meta upgrades, reinforcements for when your character dies, ammo refills, stuff like that. And that shit can make or break a run, especially the ammo pickups for special weapons, because you can only refill in between bosses. Speaking of bosses, these things are huge. Look at these kaiju-looking ass motherfuckers. When I first saw them, I went, oh, do I need to find a way to damage these things? Because I don't think my guns can hurt them. Then I just shot it with my guns and went, oh, that's disappointing. But then I realized that the main challenge was in dodging the boss's massive area of effect attacks, and realized that they also tie into the sync and adrenaline mechanics. And...
oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Yeah, that's a lot. But Metal Slug Tactics eases you into it and never makes you feel like you're overwhelmed. And I love that about it. There are times I've gotten to Morden completely eaten shit and just went, alright, one more run. Hell, all this footage is from my first handful of runs over the last few days. It's great. It's a phenomenal system that Leiker have come up with, and I want to play more of it, but I'm here talking to you about it, and...
this is bullshit!
Look, it was only a matter of time before I got a Bret Hart clip in here. Anyways, let's talk audio-visual stuff and take this bad boy home. Look at this. Look at it. It's pretty, isn't it? You look at it. You look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it! I want all of you to look at it. Okay, now that I got that out of my system, I feel like it's worth pointing out that Leiker's artists, with some help from Dotemu, managed to make a one-to-one recreation of Metal Slug's goofy-looking ass pixel art style, recreated perfectly, in grid form no less. And I mean goofy-looking ass art style in a complimentary way. You get abducted by aliens, you can get turned into a mummy as a status effect, and everyone looks so squishable as well. I love it. And then there's T. Lopez doing the music. For those of you unfamiliar, he did the soundtrack to the Streets of Rage 4 DLC. He was also the lead composer of Sonic Mania's soundtrack, and if I'm being honest, that was the only part of Sonic Mania I liked. And he was lead composer on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. So yeah, the soundtrack has some bangers in it. Hell, you've been hearing it in the background the entire time. Metal Slug Tactics is hands down one of the more enjoyable tactics games I've played in recent years. It takes a lot of smart ideas and mashes them against Metal Slug to make for something that is both endlessly replayable and something I cannot stop thinking about. Look, just buy it. The fall Steam sale starts on Wednesday. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take a trip back to Metal Slug and we'll also start gearing up for a quick expedition to the zone. Tune in next week.